moment came at a really unexpected time. I had just started my PhD, and it was online because everything was online, and it was, kind of just par for the course at that moment in time. So the professor just put out a normal question to the beginning of at the beginning of class to all of the students, and it was, introduce yourself. And so everyone was introducing themselves in relation to their children, their partner, or their job. And while I love my children and I love being a mom, I didn't want to lead with that. And I was no longer connected to my job or a partner in any way. And I had this moment of like, who am I? I mean, it was this real visceral reaction to such a simple question. And in that moment, I realized, okay, well, I get to decide who I want to be. And as someone who at that point in my life, I had been a rule follower. I was a, perfectionist, people pleaser, like, type A, you name it. I was doing all of the quote unquote right things, but what I was
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Bring on our guest, Jen Rafferty. Give her a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. There she is.
Hi,
Now,
thanks for having me.
yes, absolutely. Did I get the last name correct?
Yes, you sure did.
Okay, perfect. So, I'm extremely excited about this topic and this subject that we're going to dive into here in just a second. But before I do that, I love to let my guests tell a little bit about themselves because we can all read a bio, we can read the show notes, and the words on the screen. They tell us, but they don't tell us, right? So, would you take a moment just to let all of our listeners and even our viewers who are going to be watching this later a little bit about who you are?
Sure. Well, I was a teacher for most of my career for 15 years in public schools, and I really thought I was going to do this for the rest of my life. I wrote a book about it even in 2019, and I really was good at my job. I loved what I did. At the time, I was teaching music. I was conducting choirs all over New York State where I live, and presenting in conferences, and really working towards something that I thought that I wanted. And then, right before the pandemic and right after I published my book, my husband and I at the time decided to get a divorce. And I moved out of my house the weekend the world shut down in March with my two kids who were 5 and 7 at the time. So, not only was I going through the changes that everyone in the world was going through, also trying to navigate how to teach music online, how to homeschool my own kids, but also going through the traumatic changes of moving and a divorce. um, you know, it in retrospect led me to really reflect on what I wanted and who I wanted to be. So I decided to take off what I thought would just be a semester of teaching to homeschool my kids for the next school year. Started my PhD in educational psychology, became a certified emotional intelligence practitioner, and just dove into the research of mindset and cognitive neuroscience, which always intrigued me. And when it was time for me to decide whether or not I wanted to go back to work, I realized that the impact that I wanted to make on this world was different than what I was able to do in the classroom. So I did something really scary at the time, and I resigned from teaching. And I opened up my business, which is Empowered Educator. And now I serve teachers and school leaders, and I provide professional development that focuses on the social and emotional well being of all of the adults in schools. And it's been tremendous so far.
Wow, that is a handful, and I love it.
Yeah,
No,
it's
I
a lot.
really do.
That's the nutshell version.
So there was a saying one time, and I don't know who initially authored it, but I heard Steve Harvey say it one time, where he said sometimes you have to jump off the cliff and build your wings as you're falling. Right? You just have to take that leap uh, and just say, "I got to do it." We hear often There's no right time. I'll wait till tomorrow. I'll wait till whenever it happens, and we just don't. And I love this neuroscience, kind of aspect of things in life. I was reading a study recently. They were talking about TikTok and how in China, TikTok has almost two different ones that most Americans don't know about. But children under 14, their TikToks are by the government is mandated 40 minutes and less, and they can only see videos in reference to like science projects or some reference things to that. They don't have the ability just to scroll and see any type of videos, whereas in America it's wide open for the young kids. And then they asked the two children, which one do you want to be when you grow up? And the answer in America was like 90 something percent. I want to be an influencer. I want to be, but versus the kids there, they were like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a scientist. The same kids watching the same things. Our brains are like magnets. So, but I digress. Let's talk about your world being shaken, right? So we've got some listeners out there. Maybe you're going through something similar, whatever level. The pandemic hit, their world changed. And as I jokingly say, and most people can relate to this who've seen this episode, it's time to pivot. Pivot! Pivot! Friends with the couch.
Yep,
So,
yep, yep. That was like the word of 20, well, like the fall of 2020.
so
Day drinking was the word in the spring of 2020, but the fall of 2020 was more like
yes.
pivot. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right. So now you're sitting in your chair, your couch, your whatever, and all of this is hitting you and coming at you. You got a listener out there who's probably saying, wow, I can relate, Jen. So what steps did you kind of take you on this journey to maybe just telling you, because you didn't know about wanting to start your company at this time. The company was like a product of you going through this, right?
Yeah, yes, that's true.
Okay.
Yes.
So what steps did you kind of take to pivot to say, you know what, I got knocked down, but let me work to get back to where I want to be.
So I think there are two things that are really important. Um, the first one was to actually let out the emotion. I did a lot of crying. A lot. And because I was in isolation, I was literally by myself. Here I knew the divorce was coming. I we had decided this in December of 2019. So, I had planned to, go see my sister in Miami. And I had all these ideas about going out with my friends the first night my kids were with their dad. And none of that happened. I was literally alone. And we were all in isolation. So I had to sit with all of that. I couldn't distract myself the way that I had hoped and planned to do, which ended up being extremely uncomfortable, incredibly painful, but the most beautiful gift that I was given. Because until you really go there, you're not actually able to get to the next spot in a way that's going to serve you as best as it possibly could, because all of that emotional stuff has to go somewhere. And unless you're giving time and space intentionally to release it, no matter what you decide to do next is always going to have some sort of anchor. And so that was the first thing. And part of that also was seeking out the work that I ended up making part of my work now. So, understanding a little bit more about my brain, understanding mindset, understanding emotional intelligence helped me navigate where I wanted to go using the tools that I had with this thing in between my ears. So that I think is the first thing, and we can dive into that a little bit more afterwards. But that's kind of high level. And then the other piece of this is really staying connected to my mission. When I was teaching, my mission was very clear. It was to inspire people to discover their voice. And when I was in the classroom as teaching music and choir, that was really literal, right? But there was more to it than that. I like the idea of the way people felt empowered when they found their voice. So when I was sitting, amongst the tears all around me, I had moments where I said, okay, well, how do I do that? Because that's really the thing that I want to do. And if I don't want to do it the way I have traditionally done it before, how else can I do it? Because I know that brings me so much joy. So staying really connected to that mission was really what a rope almost that kind of pulled me out.
Love it. And it's so much that's in there that we need to unpack, like you kind of said. But you were talking about the tears, and the first thing I thought of was like "Cry Me a River," right? Justin Timberlake.
Oh,
That's like,
there was an ocean line. There was an
right? Man,
ocean.
but it is so true that one of the things I think that we do in our culture and our society is we are like, it's ingrained in us to keep emotions in.
Mhm,
If you show emotions, and especially for men, but if you show
mhm,
emotions, then you're not strong. You're not. No, sometimes some strongest people need to cry. They have to cry, right, to get it out, to work through themselves, their minds to work through that. And I absolutely love that you said, "Hey, this is where I'm at, and I'm here. I got to do it, and I got to keep working on for it." And something else you said that I say often, but in a different way, and I ask this question to people: what would you do for something or with something if you weren't taught how to do it? If you weren't told how to do it, you would just figure it out, right? Because we get so one minded, we get so it's linear, right? That we're told you have to read a book this way or you have to walk this way. That that's all we know. And it's kind of like you said, I just had to relearn and I had to do all of this stuff there. And I absolutely love that. And I think in that process, there had to come a point where you had to say, you know what, I need to relearn who I am. I had to figure that out. Oh, I saw that. Okay, dive into
yeah,
it. Let me hear it.
definitely. It's funny, that moment came at a really unexpected time. I had just started my PhD, and it was online because everything was online, and it was, kind of just par for the course at that moment in time. So the professor just put out a normal question to the beginning of at the beginning of class to all of the students, and it was introduce yourself. And so everyone was introducing themselves in relation to their children, their partner, or their job. And while I love my children and I love being a mom, I didn't want to lead with that. And I was no longer connected to my job or a partner in any way. And I had this moment of like, who am I? I mean, it was this real visceral reaction to such a simple question. And in that moment, I realized, okay, well, I get to decide who I want to be. And as someone who at that point in my life, I had been a rule follower. I was a, perfectionist, people pleaser, like, type A, you name it. I was doing all of the quote unquote right things, but what I was really doing, and kind of alluding to what you just said about being really linear, I was just kind of doing life the way I thought it was supposed to be done. And the truth is, there there are no rules. There is no way. And the only limitations that we have are the ones we actually put on ourselves.
Yeah, it's so funny with that, man. As we were talking, my mind flashes to those things that I work to teach my son and so forth because I'm really big on trying to break the cycle. And what I mean by
Hmm.
that is we're passed down from generation to generation to generation with our, you know, our lineage has passed down to us. Doesn't mean that it's wrong that they pass it down. It just means that that worked for them during their time period, right? My granddad, save, save, save. Well, today's time society, that's literally impossible. Invest, 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 right? But I would teach my son sometimes to try to think for himself, right? Don't only do what's taught. And a small example of that is when someone sneezes, right? It's innate that we just say bless you. And so I would
Hmm.
ask some people outside, I'm like, why do you say that? And their answer is, I don't know. Right? They don't even know why they say bless you. And we can go back of why when people thought that your soul left your body and all this and they're trying to keep it in. There's a couple of different stories on it. But my point of that is we have to, like you said, think for ourselves and say, I need to do it. Introduce yourself. Who am I? One of the things I learned when I lived in Europe is, in America, we go and say, what do you do? Our first response usually is work. What do you do? I work for this company. No, no, no. I didn't ask you what's your job. What do you do? When I lived in Europe, they are big on telling you, hey, what do you do? Oh, I love to go drink. I love to go eat. They speak about life more than work, work, work. And I'm just like, that is so crazy. And man, it touches. So when you're in this process, now that you've learned and you found a little bit more for yourself, now you say to yourself, what am I going to do? What do I want to do? And you started this process of going towards empowering the educators and so forth. Or am I skipping anything, jumping past it? What's the
No,
next step
that's
in that
generally what
process?
it is. Yeah, that's the highway version of it. We're not taking the local train. We're like
Right.
this express train to where we are now. Yes.
Okay, so let us hear about that. Now you've got this idea, and um, where does it go?
Where does the company go, or where what's next?
Yeah, what's next? Once you say, you know what, I want to empower people. I want, like you said in
Okay.
your teaching,
Yeah.
you said,
So I had the this idea, right? So okay, great. I immersed myself in the work of all of like the mindset, like I said, in cognitive neuroscience. So not only was I learning, but I was also embodying the work, and I was also teaching it, because what I started to do was, I had been presenting at conferences for a while. I had just written that book. I had created a name for myself, at least in New York State, amongst music teachers, especially because of the work that I had done my whole career. So I had a bit of an audience already. So what I started to do was take my information that I was learning and then create these online workshops, which, in the world of COVID, all of a sudden, the whole world opened up. So I was meeting people from all over the place. Clubhouse was like really cool for a hot minute. So I met a lot of people there too. And things started to expand. However, because of the way our brain works, your brain desperately wants to keep you the same, because that is what it equates to being safe. So anything outside of your comfort zone, whether it's, having a difficult conversation with somebody or like wanting to start a business, your brain is going to actively fight you on this. Okay. So what was so interesting is that I knew that cognitively because of the research that I was doing, but as a person who is also embodying this, I was able to navigate this a little bit. So here's a really great example about the resistance that was happening. So on one hand, I was like, oh yeah, I'm, going to be an entrepreneur. I'm like associated with all of these other, especially women, female entrepreneurs, and I'm getting all these great ideas and all these new connections and learning a whole lot. But you know what? I'm still going to apply to these jobs because I just want to make sure that this is really what I want to do. And, my company's going to take off. So when I am offered the job, I'm just going to say, no, thank you. I'm actually going to start my own business. That was what I thought in my head. And it's so ridiculous, but that's really what was happening. So no joke, I did not get one interview for jobs that I was overqualified for. And it was the scariest moment of, okay, I now have to be all in. Because looking back, of course I didn't get an interview because I wasn't all in there and I wasn't all in there, because I was just teeter tottering because that's what my brain thought would be the safest. And in fact, it was actually getting me nowhere. So that ended up being the biggest gift, because as soon as that plan got burned to the ground, I was able to go full in on my business, which is when it started to become successful.
that is like right on point because it I've learned in my growth, right? I started had to listening to positive podcasts, reading, strong material, good books, Rich Dad Poor Dad, 21 Ways to Influence Friendships and stuff. I started learning because I was like,
Classic.
I want to grow, but I can't keep being in a safe place. I can't keep being, and it's like your brain is like, no, we don't want to go down this road. But if you talk to most people who are successful, they'll tell you you gotta take that leap at some
Mhm.
point. you got to say I got to do this. And one of my favorite ones is by Mark Cuban. He has five rules, but the first two are my absolute favorite. And he says, never start a business that you are not passionate about. Because if you're passionate about it, that will take you farther than you just thinking, oh, I want to start this just for money, right? The money will come and all that stuff, but never start a business that you are not passionate about. And rule number two is if you have an exit strategy, then you don't have a business
Mm-hmm.
because you're giving yourself that way out already. If you will want this, you got to be able to crawl through the mud and pull yourself through those bad days, those tough days, and all of that.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love it because as I'm hearing you speak, it's like you're saying generational changes that helps you out to get you into your empowered business, right? So now you've got the business, now you've got the strategy. You got to find the people. You got to get people to believe in it as much as you believe in it, right? So here we are now for people who are listening to this, who are thinking to themselves, okay, I want to do something similar. I want to start this business. I start my plan. I do all of this. I jump into business. Now you got to deal with that battling of yourself, right? You got to psychologically keep your mind positive and fight off the toxic energy and battle all of those things. Did you have those moments where you're like, can I really do this? Am I going to sustain it? How did you work through those moments as well?
Yeah, no, all the time. And they don't go away. Oh, so I want to make that clear too. Like no matter where you are in the journey, the thoughts are still there. Your brain produces thoughts just like how your heart beats and your eyes blink. Your brain produces thoughts. And like I said earlier, your brain's job is to keep you safe. So it's actively looking for your insecurities to just kind of dig in a little bit so it can be like, see, here's a perfect reason for you not to do the scary thing. And so it's not about shutting the voices out, it's about what to do with them when you notice them. So first of all, noticing them. That's the bare minimum thing. Number one, you have to actually notice when those thoughts are coming. Or if you're sitting at your computer and you're just kind of like pushing your mouse around and you haven't done anything for 2 hours, that's a moment of awareness of, hey, wait a second, okay, like what's actually going on here, um and so that's the first part of it. And I think the second part of it is I don't actually look at it as being positive. That's something that I actually tend to stray away from, is that word positive, because sometimes things just don't feel good. Sometimes things suck. Sometimes things are scary and you want to just, curl up in your bed and put your comforter over your head and just stay there all day. And that doesn't feel good. And no matter how much positive thinking you do, it's not going to erase how you're feeling. So, what I like to think about is alignment. And what I mean by that is I have a very clear vision as to who I want to be. The person who is 85 years old version of me, and the things that she's done and the things that she's cared about and the things and places that she's been able to touch and have influence on and the impact that she's made. And so when I'm in a position of doubt or insecurity or uncertainty, I notice, and then there's this step that I don't want to gloss over, but it's important to, calm your nervous system, because there's a physiological piece to this also. But your brain needs to feel safe, and sometimes you have to just create that safety for it. And then I ask my question, okay, well, what does that person do? What does she do in this moment? And then I just do that. And that has never steered me wrong.
Love it. And it almost reminds me of a little bit of some of the courses that I've been taking recently when I started going through this podcast course. And they said, you need to narrow down who your perfect listener is. And I'm a perfect listener. And they said, yes. And I was like, oh, I got so many listeners. No, but you need to talk to one person. Everyone's going to listen. So I started writing. And then my instructor was like, no, you need to go deeper. You need to go. I'm like, deeper? What are you talking about? I need to know um, how much money your listener makes. I need to know what type of shows they watch. Are they someone who's going to a networking event? I'm like, oh my goodness, right? And it was almost like me soul searching myself. I was like, I've got to learn this, right? So that alignment, I love that word. instead of that positivity, right? I need to get myself balanced. And it's something that I say because my listeners know, everyone knows who me. I'm retired military. I've suffered PTSD, other mental illnesses, and I'm not ashamed of it. I've worked through it and still work through it. Like you said, those voices
Mhm.
don't go away.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
I call mine resetting back to zero. I go back to
Mhm.
zero. And my wife would tell you sometimes, we talked about this on a recent episode. Shout out to my wife. She has a podcast too called Badass Queens. Go listen to it. So, but I will go in a dark space. I'll go in the bathroom, I'll go in a room, shut off all the lights, and just my zero, my quiet times, take myself away from the world a little bit. I had to find that work life blend. I heard you say one time, right? Blending them together because people think I got to find that work life balance. And sometimes, like you said, they don't balance. You just got to put the cover over your head and stuff. So you found that blend to be able to work through that, and then I assume you started to get noticed because I recently saw that you did a TED talk. Yes, let's give it up. Let's give it up. So there's that process. Now you wanted to do that for a while. You manifest that, I'm assuming, and now you're there. What was that process like? Um, were you afraid of public speaking like that? I know in some of the research I've done in that you can't have a script or something. You have to have it memorized. I could be wrong. Things might have changed. But what was that life going into that TED talk like for you?
Yeah, sure. Well, that was a dream. I had wanted to do that for a very long time. It was definitely on my vision board. I looked at it every single morning, and what happened was I was at this beautiful retreat for actually a mindset workshop that I was a part of as a participant. And I had gotten just a Facebook tag from a friend I went to college with. And he's like, Jen, this is perfect for you. And the TEDx was at my alma mater, and the theme was empowerment. So I saw that. I was like, oh, this is it. This is the thing. And so I applied. There was a big application process, and including a video and all of the rigmarole that went around with that. And there were over 80 people that applied, and only 10 got accepted. And I was fortunate to be one of them, which was remarkable. So we had about 6 months, and I had to write my script kind of in chunks. And they, wanted to just see and we could talk about it and make sure that everything was copacetic. So uh, yes, I had it memorized. No, I don't think technically it has to be, but it is highly encouraged. I grew up as a theater kid, so and for college, I was actually a music education and vocal performance major. So I've been on the stage my whole life. It is a very comfortable place for me. So I was just excited to be able to do that and be on a platform that was able to spread the message of empowered educator in a way that people could hear it easily. And what's been remarkable and kind of unexpected is that little clip that that I'm sure that you saw
Yeah.
has in just 4 weeks time has, I think, 1.3 million views just on Instagram,
Ooh.
and about half a million on TikTok right now at this point. And I wasn't even on TikTok before. But my friend was like, Jen, just put this on TikTok and you'll see what happens. But while that's cool and everything, I think, to me, the thing that really hits home is this was a message that people needed to hear, and it resonated with so many people. And I can't tell you how beautiful the responses have been from, thank you for seeing me. Thank you for saying this. Finally, someone is saying this out loud. Yes, and I've realized now that I'm not alone in this. I thought I was the only one who felt this way. And creating a space for people to feel safe to even start to have these conversations is the most important thing to me. Because again, going back to the beginning, what I said about my mission, yeah, the TED Talk was great, and it was a dream of mine, but it wasn't about me. It was really about the mission of inspiring people to discover their voice. And if by watching this TED Talk, people feel empowered, then I've done my job. And I'm hopefully planting seeds for then, people to carry the torch after me.
Yeah, absolutely. That it is right on point, and that's the same reason why I feel like I this. podcast was just dropped into my lap, because a million people could hear it, but if one person says it helped me, right? Like,
Mhm.
um, a small example: my wife and I, we also have a podcast for our son called ADHD is my superpower, because that's one of his divergent traits. And a parent came and wrote us and everything, and she said something you guys said on that really helped me, because I tried it with my daughter who has it, and it changed everything, and we now connect better. And it's like
Mm.
we're planting the seeds, we're helping people. Someone is going through it right with you. And speaking of that, ladies and gentlemen, let me see if I can bring this up, because for our listeners out there, you might not be able to see this, but we're going to watch, and actually you can listen a little bit of a little small clip of the TED Talk. Let's see if we can get this, and then we'll get you to talk about it on the other side.
Sure.
Let's see. Here we go.
Teachers are not superheroes. Now, I know that this is an unpopular opinion, but just hear me out. Teachers are heroes, definitely, but they are human heroes. Superheroes have no regard for their own well-being. You never hear Superman saying, "Hey guys, I know the world is on fire and everything, but I really need to take some me time for today." And when we make the comparison to these immortal and indestructible superheroes, we forget that teachers are people. People with incredibly big hearts, but human nonetheless, who need to actually take care of themselves. So what if we flipped the script about selflessness and changed the story? What if instead we embraced and embodied the idea that the most generous thing you can do for your students is take care of yourself?
Whew. Take care of yourself. I love it. It equates to the same thing. My wife, I tell her all the time, like, I use the plane analogy, right? When they tell you that mask comes down, grab the mask, put it on yourself first, so you can take care of it. She wants to do so many things. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, yes, but you gotta slow down and stress. So, kind of walk us through that. What was your thoughts when you were up there? The superheroes, teachers are not. I love it. Walk us through it.
Well, I'll tell you the moment on there, that was a culmination of all of the work that came before it. And I will say, writing that in particular, that portion of it, was a change of heart for me. Because I will say, I alluded to the book that I had written in 2019. The second sentence in that book says, teachers are superheroes. You're a superhero. And when this video became viral, it didn't occur to me until that moment. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let me go back and reflect as to why I wrote that. And I I came upon the conclusion of, and this was a beautiful moment of realization for me. I had to believe I was a superhero in order to justify all of the chaos. If I believed, and I hear, like, I'm feeling feels even just saying this out loud, you know, if I believed I was a superhero, then it didn't matter what was going on. I could just take it. And I can keep taking it and take it because I'm fine, totally fine. It's all fine. But it really wasn't fine. And it wasn't fine for a lot of scenarios that were happening at school, both, locally and, in society, right? Things were not fine in my personal life. The blend between those two things were not fine. And I needed to attach to that narrative to survive it, to feel as if I could survive it. And once I was on the other side of all of that, I realized that that narrative is dangerous, because in justifying the chaos, it perpetuates all of the nonsense that everyone is fighting for, or fighting against. And what I mean about nonsense are things like common sense things that shouldn't be. Teachers need support. Teachers need money. Teachers need to feel respected. Teachers need an outlet for them to express themselves in a way that's safe. Um, these are important things that, because of the rhetoric around all of it, seems nonsensical, because to me they're common sense, but for whatever reason there's this argument that's happening over here. So when we attach to that narrative, we're fine and it's okay. So once we realize, okay, wait a second, who we are actually humans I need to actually take care of myself. And like you said, we know cognitively that we need to put on the oxygen mask on first, but in reality, we don't do that because of a lot of reasons. It's too long to go into right now in this short podcast, but we don't do that. And then we are completely depleted. And so not only are we not showing up as our best selves, we're not able to have the impact that we want to make in the classroom. We're not modeling behavior that's healthy for our future generations. In fact, we are giving them the message that normalizes depletion and burnout. Like that's what we're doing. And in order to change that, we have to flip the script, recognize and honor our humanness, and take care of ourselves. And the thing about this is people are so quick to jump on this idea of self-care. Like it's not just about self-care, Jen, and I have to be clear about this too. I'm not talking about massages and bubble baths and going to the salon, like having a night out with your friends. And those things are great. But I'm talking about actual strategies and practices of self-awareness and self-regulation in real time. Literally all of the things that we've been talking about this whole entire podcast, that's self-care. And deciding that when you win, everybody wins. And I was just actually having this conversation with my mother the other night. We were at dinner and we were talking about my kids. And I was like, well, it's me first. And she's like, well, you mean the kids and then you. I said, no, no, it's me first. Because when I choose me, then I make the best decision for the kids. When I choose me, I'm able to show up completely for what they need. When I choose me, I am present. And it is a paradigm shift that is brand new. It's nobody's fault that we've gotten here because this is just like what you were saying before too, just generation. This is just how we always have done this. It's the same thing as saying God bless you after you sneeze. This is just how we've been doing this. Everyone breathes the same air, but nothing changes if nothing changes. So you have to decide, is this really working for me? Is this serving me right now? And if the answer is no, then you get to start asking yourself some difficult questions, which also means you get to start making some difficult decisions.
It is on point. Absolutely love it. And like you said, I choose me. It's an exercise that I would do all the time when I would do some lectures and talk and ask people, write down, 3, 4 things that you love in the world, or even if we're talking one on one, I say, tell me some things you love, and people can name off things that they love, but rarely will you ever hear someone put themselves in there, right? Because
Mhm.
we're conditioned in some ways to say it's bad to tell someone that you love yourself or out loud, or you're not being a team player if you don't say it. But yes, if you've got to love yourself, and that self-care thing absolutely is so true. Something that I worked to do, and my wife does also, is journaling, right? We
Mhm.
write down our feelings throughout the
Mhm.
day. If there, so then we start to kind of narrow it down. When I do this action, I feel this way. Oh,
Mhm.
I don't want to feel. So you can see, what's happening in your world, and oh, that is so. Whew, okay, so we're gonna. It is like
No, that's just it. And, nothing changes if nothing changes.
yes.
So what's beautiful about that is you get to be both the problem and the solution.
Mm,
And it's really all about you. And at the end of the day, you get the opportunity in this life to treat yourself like someone you love.
yeah.
So let's choose that.
Yeah, yeah. You got to. One of the hardest things I'm going to tell you anyone that they have to do. And shout out to one of my past guests, Olivia Cook. She said this term, so I didn't make it up. Um, but you have to look yourself in a dirty mirror.
Hmm.
You got to look yourself in that dirty mirror and say, "What am I doing wrong?" Sure, there could be other things in the world that's maybe happening and that's contributing to it, but what can I do? And it's hard for people to say I'm messing up. It's me. I need to do A, B, or C different to achieve X, Y, or Z. So I just
Mhm.
love it. All right,
Yeah.
so let's get ready to wrap it up. Let our guests know where they can find you. What features, aspects. If you got any things going, the empowered educators, how they can reach out to you. Let's disrupt the culture. Where can they find you at?
Yes, that's what it is. We are disrupting culture and we are growing, which is amazing. So one of the best ways to get in touch is through my website, which is empowerededucator.com. And if you go to the resources page, there's a ton of free stuff there, which is just all of, just giveaways and just a way for you to kind of get your feet wet with some of this work, in addition to my podcast, which is Take Notes, which is really awesome for educators. And then, the most important thing on there, though, is really the contact page or the book a call with me, because I would love to know more about you and what you do and how Empowered Educator can support you. And then the other place you can go is Facebook, which is at Empowered Educator Faculty Room, which is a really fun group where you get lots of access to me and more content, but most importantly, community with other educators who are also doing this work. And then, of course, now TikTok.
Okay, look at that. We are learning. There we go. I was like, that looked a little different.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen who are viewing this, make sure you go to this one so
Yeah.
you can check out Jen. But I absolutely love it. And I'm going to tell you one reason why I really push for this is because this is something that we didn't know in life, like you said, generational stuff that we didn't understand. That coaching is something we can use because every sport has a coach. They don't just throw you out there, right? Sometimes we're sitting in our vehicle, and this is that perfect listener that I was talking about. That was me. I said, let me write to myself when I was 25, 24 in that time frame, sitting in my vehicle, pulling up to work, listening to this last song because I just didn't want to get out and go into my job. And I was saying, I want something better. I just don't know how to get it. Right. And then I met a mentor. I didn't know it was a coach kind of at the time, but I met someone who said, hey, you want this type of career, you need to take this trajectory. You need to start on this path. And really, I didn't know I could do that. Yes, go apply for this. They give out those. So I absolutely love it. So ladies and gentlemen, make sure you go check out all of Jen's works, everything. Listen to her TED Talk. If you're in a position in this life right now where you say, I want something different, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, if nothing is changing, then you've got to change it, right? You've got to do something different.
Absolutely.
So any last
Yeah.
parting words for our listeners and our viewers right now?
Just breathe. That is a very undervalued and underutilized tool that we have at our disposal all the time. And when you're feeling all the feels, just take a moment. For me, I put my hand to heart and just take a breath. And in that, you have the ability to just be present. You are here, you are alive, and you have all of the power if you choose to use it.
There you go. Last words, ladies and gentlemen. Jen, hold on for 1 second. Let me pay a little bit of these bills and I'll be right back with you, okay? Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank y'all for listening to another episode of J1Q. What's your question, right? It can be whatever you want, but like, Jen was just saying, just take a moment and breathe, right? Just listen, just slow down. If the world's coming at you left and right and going fast, just slow down, right? So, as I always say, and you all know that I really appreciate it, but make sure you keep living while you are alive.
Thank you for listening to Just One Question. I know you enjoyed the show because you made it this far. If you want to hear more, subscribe, share, and don't forget to give us a 5-star review. Now, what's your one question?